on the goal line was standing in the end zone, and the ball was on the 8-yard line. And Joe was on the sideline with Bill during the TV timeout. He came back in, and that's when he did the old John Candy thing about, hey, is that John Candy over there? And it kind of broke the ice, and everybody looked over and went, yeah. And it totally loosened everybody up. But there are people that they're built different. And the normal human being gets nervous in those situations. And then the abnormal human being, like Joe Montana, gets calmer and calmer and cooler the more intense things get.
The Boss and the Gloss, Monday nights from 6 to 8 Eastern.
Imagine learning about radio and being mentored by true radio professionals in real radio stations. Well, actually, you don't have to imagine, because there's Radio Connection. Radio Connection gives you the opportunity to learn one-on-one and be mentored by radio pros. Plus, you don't have to worry about getting into a crazy amount of debt with school tuition either. Radio Connection keeps their tuition at much lower costs. To find out more info, visit radioconnection.com.
Sports Map Tonight with Luke Morrow.
But the most annoying part about flying, of course, is always the people. I can't stand the people that cut the line. As soon as the plane lands, they're up out of their seat and they're running towards the front of the plane. And especially when I try to stand up to get out of my row and they don't stop for you, they just keep passing you.
Oh, man, I think we'd be playing enemies.
You and I?
I think so.
Why? You're one of those? You're getting right off the plane?
I am one of the guys who try to jump and rush off the plane. But I will let people in if they're like, people keep passing them up.
Yeah.
I will let them in line.
Oh, well, at least you'll do that. Unbelievable. You're reclining your seat. You're cutting to the front of the plane.
I only recline my seat with kids. That's the only one.
Oh, okay, if you say so. What about when it comes to boarding the flight? Do you wait till your zone, or are you up, like, hovering around?
No, I wait till my zone.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but oddly enough, they always think I'm military whenever I come.
Oh, really?
Like, I always get asked.
Yeah, I can see that. You fit the role.
Sports Map Tonight, weeknights from 10 to 1 Eastern.
The Diehards.
And then all of a sudden, a sweeper pitch comes in. What's a sweeper? And I looked at her and I went, I don't know. Hey, Siri, what's a sweeper pitch? What is going on? Like, I felt like I was lost. And I'm like, I cover sports. I know this. Again, I'm a knucklehead fan on the radio, but I'm like, what is this? And then I'm seeing slurve. And I'm going, what? Like, am I gone?
The Diehards, weeknights from 8 to 10 Eastern on the Sports Map Radio Network.
You're listening to WRDB, Western Reserve Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, Warren, Salem, and around the world.
Progressive presents the Sports Flash on Western Reserve Radio.
Men's hoops last night, Youngstown State beat Robert Morris 87-77. Milwaukee with a 71-68 win at Cleveland State. Oakland beat Purdue-Fort Wayne 71-63. Detroit Mercy over IUPUI 81-66. Northern Kentucky beat Green Bay 58-57. Michigan State with an 80-72 win at Penn State. Seton Hall over Xavier 88-70.
Garland, left corner of Coro, right back to DG, 5 on the shot clock. Garland against Caruso. Garland steps right, 3-ball. Bang!
Call on Cavaliers Radio in last night's 108-105 win over the Bulls. All-star Donovan Mitchell had 30 points, including the go-ahead free throw with 44 seconds remaining. For lightning fast updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of North America's most popular sports apps. That's the Sports Flash. Chuck Sanders, Western Reserve Radio.
Total by Verizon is wireless that goes all in for you. That means unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon, priced by us at $25 a line for 4 lines on the unlimited plan. And as always, no contracts. Sounds pretty hard to beat, but all in is all in. So we added international calling to fill the year with more, hey girl, because it can't be total unless it's all in. Find a store and exclusive deals at totalbyverizon.com. Monthly rate when you activate with autopay discount beginning the month after you enroll plus taxes and fees. Additional restrictions apply. See website for data management practices and full terms.
Progressive presents 10 things on a food truck owner's to-do list that are harder than getting a commercial auto insurance quote. Stocking the fridge, prepping the stations, finding employees that get along well, finding employees that actually do their job. Looking at you, Gary. Balancing the books, balancing the flavors, having a fresh menu and fresh produce and fresh meat, but never a fresh mouth. But the easiest thing on a small business owner's to-do list? Seeing if you can save on commercial auto insurance. Get a quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Coverage subject to policy terms and conditions.
Keyboard Cat, Hamilton the Pug, and Toast Meets World. These are some of the internet's most beloved pets. and they all have one thing in common. Their stories started in a shelter. Start your story. Adopt a dog or cat today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Training that pet to play the keyboard, that's optional. Start a story. Adopt a shelter or rescue pet today. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Okay, what are you wearing right now?
Nothing.
That's right. So mommy's going to teach you how to dress yourself. Underwear always comes first, name tag at the back, then pants, then shirt. Get the first button in the right hole or you have to start all over. Socks going first, then shoes, right on right, left on left. With shoelaces, just take the ends, cross them over, switch the loops. The rabbit goes down the hole, pull tight, and you're left with bunny ears. Got it? Why are your pants on your head?
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush their teeth is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain. Visit 2min2x.org to find out more. A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.
How's it going? I'm having a stroke. Are you going to shake my hand? I'm having a stroke. Wow, you're not even moving your arm. I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear. Look for FAST. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911 immediately. Know the sudden signs. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
The storks are bringing me a baby brother. We can do this together.
All right, let's go.
Storks know how to keep kids safe. Do you?
What?
Oh my gosh, you don't know.
I know.
You don't. Oh man, you laugh when you're uncomfortable.
No.
Making sure your child is in the right car seat is one of the steps to safer travel.
I will rock this.
You will rock this.
To know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size, visit safercar.gov/the right seat.
Cool. Very cool.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hello, Phantom fans, and welcome to Season 6, Episode 18 of the Dump and Chase podcast. My name is Sam Olmstead, and joining me, as always, are two closeted Swifties, Dan Conley and Justin Irwin. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Oh, I'm fully out of the closet on this. I'm proud to say I'm a Swiftie.
Swiftie? I don't even have my CDL.
And of course, we are recording a day later thanks to the Super Bowl being played on the night we normally record all this. Justin, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting you're a Browns fan. The Super Bowl is a championship game played at the end of a football season. It's kind of a big deal.
Justin doesn't look amused.
Yeah, I was going to say football. Yeah, that's cute for about the first 3 weeks that there isn't a hockey season.
Yeah, there's always next year.
And half the people listening to this show will not be amused by that either. Shout out to everybody listening in Northeast Ohio. So last week, we hear the sound of air raid sirens and the smell of torches being lit, which can only mean one thing. The Phantoms made a trade.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I mean, there were some opinions.
And how funny is it that you brought up the fan group and the civilness and then complete civil unrest happened?
I know. Well, that's on you. I'm not the one in charge of it.
No, it was on the. You're right.
That's on you. That's on you. I have nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the general consensus around anybody in charge of anything or anybody who remotely has a brain can see where things got a little bit out of control there.
Yeah. So basically, and we're going to get into this more later, and I'll explain that in a minute. Basically, the nuts and bolts of this trade was that Brandon Svoboda and Finn McLaughlin were sent to Fargo. Fargo getting both of those players and also getting a 2024 Phase 1 fifth-round pick from the Phantoms. In return, the Phantoms are getting a 2024 Phase 1 second-round pick, a 2024 Phase 2 second and fourth-round pick, a 2025 Phase 1 third-round pick, and a 2025 Phase 2 second-round pick. I mean, all in all, the lowest round in those four is a fourth-round pick in Phase 2. I mean, that's a pretty good haul.
And future considerations.
Every once in a while, a team will make an offer you can't refuse. anytime the common person sees a trade and they see your players going for picks, doesn't really sound that good. But to your point, Sam, those early phase 1 picks are very valuable, and you look and see who we got in the phase 2 draft this year and how big of a role they're playing. So there is some value there as well. But those phase 1 draft picks are pretty valuable going forward.
Yeah.
And I mean, it speaks to how much the management and everybody thinks about what we have in the system. And, we can bring players up. Brandon Svoboda was a pretty decent offensive player, but, you look at records and things and, I think overall we got quite a haul there.
Yeah. Also on the transaction list with the Phantoms running 3 goalies, that is back down to 2. Owen Bartoskevich was dropped from the roster. He ended up going back to, technically his old North American Hockey League team. Back then they were the Wichita Falls Warriors. They're now the Oklahoma Warriors. So he went back to them, debuted back with them here just a couple days ago, and gave up 9 goals in that game. So, ouch.
I mean, I'm sure he'll bounce back, but yeah.
You hate to pile on somebody, but that's definitely not the start he was looking to have.
No, that's, I mean, best of luck to him in his future. We wish him nothing but the best, but, that's rough. There's just that there's no way to put a good spin on that one whatsoever. I mean, hopefully it's nowhere but upwards from here. The Phantoms also adding to the roster Colson Hanrahan, a right shot D from the Junior Islanders in the NCDC. There'll be a little bit more. You know what? I'll just save that for the end. Owen Boucher making his USHL debut, coming from Fox Motors 16U, replacing, I believe it was going to be Kuzma Voronin, who was in the lineup on Friday, was not in the lineup on Saturday, was listed as out with an injury. So I guess Owen there making his debut, filling in as he was in the immediate area of that arena, because that is Muskegon is Fox Motors territory. So and I believe they even said his team played earlier that day on that same rink.
Yep, that's what I was getting ready to say. It was pretty cool when he did his rookie lap. You saw the whole team down there hitting the glass, cheering him on.
Yeah. All right. So coming up in this episode, we will be recapping the 2 games with Muskegon. In this week's edition of Phantom Files, we actually don't have a guest this week, but we do have a lot to talk about in that segment. Again, going back to these trades and everything else, there's a few things I feel like I need to get off my chest. So no guest this week, no interview this week. It'll just be me droning on, but believe me, I've got a lot to say.
We're here for you, Sam.
Yeah. And then we will be previewing the 3-game weekend coming up for the Phantoms, starting out with games on Friday and Saturday in Madison, and then the game on Sunday in Waterloo. That is the makeup game from that ill-fated trip to Iowa last month. So with that, we're going to take a short break. The weekend recap is coming up next on the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
During the fall and winter, grilling season never ends, and Gessler Propane is your local supplier that makes sure you get your hard-earned money's worth. Why go to gas exchanges to pay higher prices for tanks not filled to capacity? Gessler Propane makes sure you're prepared for year-round grilling with 100% filled tanks at a reasonable cost. See Bob Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 3 at Gessler Propane, 702 Youngstown Poland Road, Struthers, or call 330-755-9119. Gessler Propane. They got gas.
WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. Take 1.
Behold the angry giant.
Try it again, Alberto.
Behold the angry giant.
Perfect. Good luck tonight.
Behold the angry giant.
Yay! Read me another one, Dad.
This is WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This is Voice of the Phantoms and friend of the show, Matt Lipsack, and you are listening to the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
Welcome back to the Dump and Chase podcast on the home of Phantoms Hockey, Western Reserve Radio. So this past weekend, the Phantoms take a trip up to Muskegon, their last trip to Muskegon in the regular season, only picking up 1 point out of a possible 4. Is it weird to say that the game on Friday, even though it was a shootout loss, it felt like the effort was better on Saturday in a 5-3 loss?
It's hard to say. You're only picking up 1 point out of the weekend. And
yeah.
Obviously, that's the focus. I lost a bet with myself in that second game that they were going to tie it up.
So starting out with the game on Friday, this was a 4-3 shootout loss for the Phantoms. Muskegon goes up 2-0 after the first period. Youngstown in the second period would tie the game at 2 with goals by Ryan Botterill and Grant Young. Grant Young picking his up on the power play. So after the second period, the game's tied at 2. And then what was almost the greatest goal in Phantoms history was taken away due to geometry. So
Math is a fickle mistress.
So you have this play around the net where Adam Patilla is shoved into Muskegon's goaltender, falls into the back of the net. Ryan Rusinski with the puck takes the shot, hits it off of Patilla's leg. So Adam Patilla made the save there. At that point, Muskegon just stopped playing and all turned to look at the referee about what, I don't know, Patilla being in the net or whatever, or why the whistle wasn't blown. The play was still going on.
I think they maybe thought the puck went in the net.
And Muskegon just stopped and all turned to the referee. And I mean, a heads up play by Ryan Rusinski, had the awareness that the play was still going on, got the puck back, shot it again, and deflected it off of Adam Patilla's skate into the goal while Adam Patilla was still in the goal. And we thought it was Adam Patilla's goal until you went to the replay, slowed it way down, zoomed in, and find out that the puck hit the very back of Adam Patilla's blade, which was the only part of his skate that was past the goal line.
Yeah, that play there is it's cliche coach speak, but you play to the whistle.
Yeah.
And Rusinski played to the whistle. Everybody else stopped, wondering what was going on. And we all thought the same thing, Sam. We all thought that, like you said, Patilla scored a goal from inside the goal, and we were going to talk then literally millimeters away from doing so. But
it would have been one heck of an assist to Rusinski.
Yeah. If the puck would have hit anywhere else on his skate blade, that would have been Patilla's goal. Rusinski, with that pinpoint accuracy, hit the one part of his skates that was behind the goal, that was completely behind the goal line.
And regardless, it was a goal.
When it was all said and done, it was a goal.
After a bit of review, discussion,
and it was
etc.
And it was pointed out to me that Adam Patilla went out of his way to make sure Ryan Rusinski did not get a goal there. And voice of the Phantoms, Matt Lipsack, pointed out to me how ticked off would have Rusinski been if Patilla blocked the first shot and then got the goal on the second attempt and basically took it away just by being there. That was almost the greatest goal in Phantoms history. When you could score a goal from inside the net, almost the greatest goal in history, just millimeters away. So yeah, with that goal, the Youngstown went up 3-2. Muskegon later on in the period on the power play would tie the game at 3. The game would go to overtime. Actually, one of the more adventurous overtimes I think we've seen in a while. Each team getting 4 shots on goal.
Both teams definitely taking advantage of the open ice. 4 shots apiece and no goals on those 4 shots.
And you saw Youngstown, with their 3 guys on the ice running a forward and 2 defensemen. Except when Andrew Strathman was on the ice, he was doing his darndest to do his best William Whitelaw impression while he was out there. I mean, A for effort, he was trying, and the one time he came very close to ending that game in overtime.
Yeah, he really thought he was going to. That Friday game, I think that was one of the better games I've watched all year. That was back and forth, a lot of chances for offense. Like you said, the 4 shots in overtime, they weren't just like shots. I think the Phantoms had almost 2 breakaways. Muskegon peppered the net a couple of times. That was about as close to a game as you could have gotten to.
I think multiple times we were texting each other and commenting on, it's an entertaining game, win or lose, but then we get to overtime, to the shootout.
As far as the game on Friday, Phantoms were a little slow on the rush. It's I think they were much more lively in the Saturday game. I think if they would have played the Friday game the way they played the Saturday game, they win that game on Friday.
Agreed.
Saturday, I think it just boiled down to Muskegon was just the better team in that game.
Yeah, for me, the commonality between the 2 games, whereas Muskegon just made, again, I hate coaches' cliche talk here. Muskegon made more plays. They made more plays when they had to. They were able to clear the puck when they had to. And obviously they put the puck in the back of the net a little more often as well.
Yeah, but so the game on Friday goes to a shootout. Strathman and Yenchko picking up the shootout goals for Youngstown. Unfortunately, all 3 Muskegon shooters scored, so they get the shootout win. And Dan, you had pointed out, how often do you see a shootout go where 5 of the 6 shooters score?
Yeah, that's a far cry from the Omaha shootout we saw at the Gavelli Center last month. And they were all good goals. It wasn't just like luckily getting in. And that, unfortunately for Colin, that's Sasha Boisvert. His second goal from Muskegon. I think that made it on a lot of top plays. It had garnered a lot of traction online of how nice of a shot that was. And that's just unfortunate that Colin's in there in the capacity that he is.
I think it's best for Colin's mental health if we just drop that right there.
I don't think a whole lot of goalies in this league.
No, God, no.
No,
that was something else. But
probably the sooner you forget that one, the better. Yeah, so moving on to the game on Saturday, this was a 5-3 loss for the Phantoms. The Phantoms going down 2-1 in this game in the first period, the lone goal being scored by Grant Young, so picking up his second of the weekend. The Phantoms tie the game in the second period thanks to a very nice goal by Daniel Yenchko. Unfortunately, gave up that lead 2 minutes later. Going into the third period, the Phantoms were down 3-2. Early in the third period, Ryan Botterill ties the game. Muskegon would end up tacking on another goal to go up 4-3 and then picking up the empty netter there at the end. Thankfully, it wasn't a slap shot, so we were spared what could have happened there. It wasn't a slap shot on the empty net.
And it probably would have happened too.
Yeah, for the 5-3 final. Yeah, this was just, like I said, the Phantoms felt more lively with the puck than they did on Friday. I think a lot of things were better on Saturday. But like we said, it just came down to Muskegon was better.
Yeah, unfortunately, Muskegon upped their game as well, I think. In general, Muskegon's had our number this year.
Yeah.
There's always that one team, and I think that this year it's Muskegon.
Let's say it seemed like every mistake the Phantoms made over the weekend was punished. It was like no good deed goes unpunished. Every time they made a little mistake here or there,
yeah,
puck found its way in the back of the net.
Yeah. Youngstown goes up, Youngstown goes down 1-0. They come back and tie the game. They go down 2-1. They come back and tie it. They go down 3-2. They come back and tie it. So just kind of constantly battling back all game. Yeah. Aiden Wright getting the start in this game, stopped 22 of 26, picking up his first USHL loss. Now he was a scratch on Friday, was listed due to illness. I don't know if him getting over that illness factored into anything on the game on Saturday. I definitely felt like there was, at least a couple of pucks there, he'd want back. But at the same time, welcome to the USHL.
Yeah, you're not going to win every game as a goalie in this league.
No.
And you wonder, how much practice time did he get due to illness, etc. Hopefully that's all it was illness, and he'll be back up to top form here soon.
Yeah, I'd want to.
And with that first loss under his belt, I'm sure he'll want to make a bounce back.
Yeah, going into this weekend, I really wanted to see how he performed because he hasn't played a team of Muskegon's caliber yet. So it was interesting to see how that would go. Now that kind of shifts to, okay, you take your first loss, how do you react to that in the next game?
Exactly.
So, and that's what I'm going to be looking for this upcoming weekend.
Yeah. He's faced it. He's got a tough task where the league's past halfway, so everyone's in midseason for him.
Yeah.
He's a person who just got called up, so he's still trying to adjust to the game, still trying to learn what works, what doesn't work. And these are growing pains. I agree with you guys. Hopefully he'll use this as a learning experience and be better going forward because of it.
Yeah. All right. So with that, it is now time for the Dump and Chase podcast 3 stars of the week. So whichever one of you is kicking it off with a 3rd star, go right ahead.
I think I picked that. Luke Osborne, 2 assists on the weekend. Pete Krupski's most improved player in the USHL.
From Plymouth.
I mean, he's been, playing his butt off the past few weeks, most of the season. Maybe not a lot of recognition, but this weekend he definitely stood out.
All right, that brings us to our 2nd star of the week, and that's Ryan Botterill. He had 2 goals on the weekend, and he now finds himself in a 7-game point streak. He's been playing very well since he got moved to Breckin Smith's line. They've been connecting on quite a few goals, and he's providing a much-needed spark for the Phantoms in very opportune times for the team. So,
all right, and the 1st star of the week, which we didn't do 3 stars last week. I think it would have been possibly. We didn't do 3 stars last week. Our 1st star of the week, Grant Young, 2 goals and 1 assist on the weekend. On the season, Grant Young with 8 goals. 5 of those have come in the last 3 games.
Yeah, he's got 9 points in the last 10.
I mean, and we're getting to the point of year, you're going to see some guys slump. This is where you want to see some of the other guys start to pick it up to make up for that.
Right.
And the last couple weekends, he's answered the call. And it's just every game you see him in, he's just looking more and more and more impressive. So, to see what happens going forward, it's going to be very interesting.
Right.
All right. So with that all out of the way, we're going to step aside for a moment. When we come back, I'm going to say some stuff for this week's segment of Phantom Files. So keep it here with the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
This is Everett Fitzhugh, the radio voice of the NHL Seattle Kraken. And when I want to catch up with Youngstown sports, I tune in to Western Reserve Radio, WRDB, The Scourge.
We're back with the Dump and Chase podcast on the home of the Youngstown Phantoms, Western Reserve Radio. So for this week's edition of Phantom Files, like we said before, not an interview. This might quite possibly be the last episode we ever do. I'm not sure. I think if I just keep lowering expectations on this, it won't be as bad. And now I'm going to preface this by saying 2 things. Number one, in a way, it really is awesome that people are as engaged with the team as they are. The Phantoms have a bad weekend or a trade that they don't like, that people just kind of get this upset about it, is a far cry from what it used to be.
Yeah. Every silver cloud has a shade of gray.
I'm putting that on a t-shirt. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I think the Grateful Dead did it or something.
You know what I mean? But just going back even a few years ago, the Phantoms have a bad weekend. You don't hear anything from anybody until they would win another game.
The Phantoms have a bad month or 2.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah, there's no engagement. Everybody just kind of moves on and, doesn't give it another thought. So, I mean, the fact that people care this much says a lot about what this team has accomplished. At the same time, a couple things need cleared up and a couple narratives really need to stop.
Yeah, success breeds passion.
Yeah.
So good and bad.
The second point I'm going to bring up is that anyone that I mention in this segment, at no point will I be saying that they're bad hockey players, that they're bad human beings. They deserve to have their fingernails peeled off one by one. Anything that I talk about is going to be based on fact or it's going to be based on statistics. I'm not going to be making assumptions. I'm not going to be guessing things. Everything I'm going to say has been verified.
It is mostly black and white.
Yeah. Starting out with, the trade that just took place with Brandon Svoboda and Finn McLaughlin. A lot of people were upset by this, and I get that. Loved having Boda around. Great kid.
Best smile in the league.
He's one of the good ones. The fact of the matter was Brandon Svoboda in this system this year with Youngstown was not working out. And I know this statistic was brought up on the fan page. There's actually more to it than that. So far this season, in 25 games that Brandon Svoboda was in the lineup, the Phantoms went 11-10, 3-1, averaging 3.5 goals per game. When Brandon Svoboda was out of the lineup, the Phantoms were 11-1-1 and were averaging 4.5 goals per game. Now, can you point directly to him and say that's all his fault? No. But when you're somebody that's on the bubble, that's pretty damning. That is not a statistic you want to have hanging on you.
And when you have teams in this league that are selling like Fargo was.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are like, well, this is the team we faced in the finals last year. I mean, there's a good chance if you make it to the finals this year, you'll be playing against Brandon.
Yeah.
So, and that will be great for him. It's not like we sent him to Omaha.
Yeah. Now, our apologies to Omaha. We know what you're going through.
Yeah.
But they beat us.
Again, the parity in this league.
Exactly.
And Muskegon has our number.
Now, see, what I did, for comparison's sake, I took another player who had played roughly the same amount of games, had missed the same amount of games as Brandon, and that's Charlie Serrato. Charlie Serrato, in the lineup, the Phantoms' win percentage is 40 points higher. When Charlie Serrato was in the lineup, the Phantoms' goals per game was half a goal higher. When you're talking about somebody who has played the same amount of games, has missed the same amount of games.
Obviously, you can't make an apples to oranges comparison. I mean, apples to apples comparison there, but that's quite a difference.
And it just boils down to, now, is Brandon a bad hockey player? No, he's not. But just for whatever reason, just in the Phantom system this year, it wasn't working out. What we expected Brandon to be this season was not panning out. I hate to see him go, but I tell people all the time, do not get overly attached to these kids because there is the business side of this and these things happen.
And also be glad he's not on an Eastern Conference team that we'll be seeing several more times this year.
Finn McLaughlin, I guess you could say, a casualty of war in this situation, but but there's factors that went into this as well. His last 14 games with the Phantoms only had 2 assists. If the Phantoms are running 7 defensemen, he's that extra defenseman. If they're running 8 defensemen, he's, on that 3rd defensive line or that 4th defensive line, not getting a ton of playing time.
As was made out to us several times by several different people, I think. The Phantoms were really looking to add a right-handed defenseman. Apparently they had one of those in the pipeline.
Yeah, as far as the 8 defensemen on the Phantoms roster, 6 of them were left shot defensemen. The Phantoms only had 2. You need that balance there. The Phantoms weren't anywhere close to having that balance. So as far as the 8 defensemen, take out the 2 that are right shot defensemen and look at the other 6 left shot defensemen. And again, I think it was a case of Finn McLaughlin just wasn't fitting into the system this year. He becomes the odd man out, again, not reaching his full potential, but he was somebody that, as far as this trade is concerned, had value to Fargo.
He's somebody I think that the Phantoms, you heard Coach Ward talk at the beginning of the year, how much he liked McLaughlin, and he played under, Finn played with him at Windy City. So they brought him there. So there was a connection there. We all know that he was very well liked by the coaching staff. He's a good player, a great human being. And, that decision wasn't made lightly, as you said.
No, absolutely not. But there's just this kind of narrative that of people acting like that the Phantoms just sent Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang off to another team.
Right.
No. I'm sorry. No offense to these guys. They're great players. It just wasn't working out in Youngstown. We see this happen every year.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go on and they have better success with these other teams. They're put in a better position. And so, sometimes they don't, but, and that's going to be something I'll bring up here in a little bit. Now, the odd part of all this, because for some reason, anytime the word trade comes up, this keeps getting brought up, is the Jake Rossi trade in the offseason. That for some reason, every time the word trade gets thrown around, somebody has to bring up the Rossi trade. The fact of the matter was, this all started out with the fact of after last season, coming into this season, the Phantoms were going to be having trouble with their numbers as far as imports are concerned. And for anybody that needs a refresher, a team can carry 4 imports on the roster. They can carry 6 as long as 2 of them are Canadian. So you can have a total of up to 6 imports on your roster as long as 2 of them are Canadian. Those are like freebies. The problem the Phantoms were running into was they were going to be over the number of imports. Especially when you're talking about 2 of the tenders that were coming in Sasha and Zach, were both imports. So room had to be made somewhere. The fact of the matter was, Rossi getting traded boiled down to certain players were not honest about their intentions in the offseason. Now, whether it's the players, I think you can put more of the blame on the advisors than you can the players. But the fact of the matter is there were people that were not honest with this team in the offseason. Because the belief was that Kenta and Marty Misiak were coming back this season. That did not happen. When the draft came around and the trade was made with Madison, it was understood that both Kenta and Misiak were coming back this year. So that trade was made with Madison at the beginning of May, USHL draft. For Youngstown got the first overall pick in phase 2. Madison got future considerations. At the beginning of June, we found out those future considerations were Jake Rossi, Blake Beshin, and James Fisher. Fast forward a month later to the CHL draft, Misiak goes first overall, Kenta was taken 60th. It was at that point when the team was informed that both of those players were not coming back. So that's 2 imports right there. That is when the team was informed, after the trade had already been made and was done and over with. Because anyone I've talked to has said if they would have known that beforehand, if people were honest beforehand, Rossi would not have been traded, because they wouldn't have had an import problem. But at the same time, right off the bat with that Rossi trade, we got the better of that trade with Madison by far. Because first off, James Fisher immediately went to the BCHL. He didn't even go to Madison. He went straight to the BCHL. Blake Beshin was traded from Madison to Green Bay before the season even started. And Rossi played 5 games in Madison before he was traded to Tri-City. Rossi, he's having a good year, 34 points. Now, losing Kenta and Misiak ended up opening up the door for Daniel Yenchko and Ryan Botterill. Making that trade with Madison, giving them Rossi, got us Charlie Serrato. Now Rossi, like I said, 34 points on the season. Ryan Botterill, Yenchko, and Serrato, 76 points combined. Those 3 guys that came in when it was all said and done because of that Rossi trade. And the question you have to ask yourself is when it's all said and done, when the dust settled, with everything that happened, did that trade make Youngstown better? Yes.
I can only imagine you with like a whiteboard, like charting this all out, man.
Strings attaching everything.
Yes. Brilliant breakdown, dude.
I know, because I haven't even told you guys some of this stuff yet. So you're kind of like absorbing it for the first time.
Yeah, I'm sitting. I'm seeing you. Yes, taking the yarn and stretching it across the board. Pictures. To say it the least, it's complicated, man.
There's a lot of moving parts in this league.
Yeah,
that people don't know about,
and you never know what the heck is going to pop out. And I understand Misiak. You've been drafted. You have a little less leverage over what you do. But at this point, I think between the leagues, I don't see any reason for all the secrecy.
Yeah.
I just don't see it really anymore. We all see how things connect.
Misiak, to his credit, from what I've been told, to his credit, he was the one that helped put, Daniel Yenchko on Youngstown's radar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though he had gone off to Erie, he played a part in putting Yenchko on our radar. But this narrative that the team doesn't want to win, that we just keep giving away all our best players, is completely ridiculous. I mean, there's no other way to say it. If that's what you think, it's ridiculous, because it boils down to this. Like we talked about, the business side of hockey. Jason Kohler buried this team.
Here we go.
The former GM of the Phantoms, Jason Kohler, now with Tri-City. Jason Kohler buried this team. You're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody in this town, besides the people that do deals with him, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody in this town with anything nice to say about Jason Kohler.
And by do deals, I mean, yeah, he'll set up a little table at the side of the road and trade you players for picks.
Year after year after year, he traded away the Phantoms' future for the here and now. Who cares about draft picks next season? Who cares about draft picks 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Who cares? It was always the here and now.
If I can get an overager today for a couple of first-round picks tomorrow.
Yeah. When Jason Deskins and Ryan Kisecki came to this team, the draft cupboard was pretty bare. There was nothing there. There was nothing there to build a team for the future. They come in, and players are jumping ship left and right. A lot of players wanted out of Youngstown. And funny side story, after the Phantoms won the cup, a handful of those players reached out wanting to come back to Youngstown.
Funny how things work out.
Not pertinent to anything. I just thought it was funny.
Apparently so did general managers and anybody with say-so.
Yeah.
Because they laughed at them.
And Dan, I believe it was last week, after we recorded last week, you and me were chatting afterwards, and I brought up the list of transactions from their first season. Mm-hmm. That like all those players that were traded away and everything else, and all those deals that were made, was basically them in a way trying to put the team in a better spot for that season, but at the same time trying to rebuild that draft stock for the future. And that first season, it was just transaction after transaction after transaction. And, the Phantoms had their 12-win season, 31 points that season. The new GMs come in, the new leadership comes in. The Phantoms go from 31 points to 68 points. Fourth seed in the Eastern Conference, they hosted a first-round series. Unfortunately, it was against Simon Latkozy.
Yep.
After that 12-win season, beginning that next season, was anybody saying this is a playoff team?
Nobody but the general managers and coaches who were like, hey, we're a young team, just give us time.
Yeah, this was a rebuilding phase. It was going to, the Phantoms were into a rebuild phase. It was going to take time. But in that season, they went from 38 points to 68 points. Fourth seed hosting a playoff series.
And I've lost track of where we compare to at that point. But I mean, for most of this season, we have been well ahead of where we were last season.
And then from 68 points, getting into the first round of the playoffs to the next season, up to 81 points. 2 seed in the playoffs, Clark Cup champion. All of that done in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That is what this leadership group for this team did.
And we're still outpacing that.
And we're outpacing that this season. But they make a trade. They send somebody away from Youngstown that you have an attachment to because they gave you a fist bump after a game one day and they became your favorite player. And you want to say that these people are idiots and they don't know what they're doing. That is completely ridiculous.
That's what happens when everybody has a voice at home.
Yeah.
You can say whatever they want to say. Freedom of speech, but you're not freedom of consequence from that speech.
The original point of social media was to give a voice to people who didn't have a voice before. After all these years, we've discovered there's a reason some of those people shouldn't have had a voice.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. I mean, and when you get pushback, then you act all indignant.
It's everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a right to give an opinion. But when you're just making wild assumptions in your head and shouting them from the rooftops like they're fact, that's where the problems start. Every GM in this league has 2 goals, winning and development. And at the end of the day, yes, every GM in this league wants to win games. But if the players aren't being developed for the next level, there is no league.
Or the next season.
You guys ever watch Glass Onion movie?
No.
There's a quote in there that's always stayed with me. It says, thinking you're speaking the truth when you speak your mind is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And I think of that all the time when I read some of the comments and posts on social media.
And I mean, that's fine if you disagree with the trades. I mean, voice that, but don't act like, these people are just doing this to lose games.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
But when a trade happens, a trade is made in the best interest of a team and the best interest of a player. We all didn't like the fact that Justin Varner was traded to Lincoln. We
still miss him.
We loved Justin Varner in Youngstown. We still, to this day, miss Justin Varner in Youngstown. But the reality was, with the lineup that the Youngstown was bringing in this year, and as long as Justin Varner was in the league, he was not going to be a top 6 forward on this team. That was the reality of it. He was going to be a third line. He was going to be a third line guy after as many years as he's had in the league, just by the way this roster was constructed. And we talked about this back then. He gets traded to Lincoln, where he absolutely will be a top 6 forward on that team, because Lincoln lost a ton of firepower from last season.
Yeah.
Justin Varner had a better opportunity in Lincoln than he was going to have in Youngstown. And that was something that was on the minds of the leadership of this team when they made that trade. They hated to see him go. They hated to have that conversation, but they knew it was in the best interest of him.
I'm sure the same with Jake Rossi. I mean, you don't want to see him drop down to the null just because there's no spot for him.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of players in this league that, due to either no overage slots or, no import slots, you end up in the null.
So in summation, I mean, if you're someone that thinks that this team is tanking, that this team doesn't want to win, that this team is just giving away their best players for the heck of it, please stop, because none of it is true. The old cliche, the hardest thing to do in sports is not to win a championship. It's to do it twice in a row. A little pop quiz for you guys. Can you name the last time a USHL team won back-to-back Clark Cups?
Ooh, I want to say Waterloo.
Has it happened? I don't know.
Waterloo or Omaha?
1993, 1994 Omaha.
Yeah.
30 years ago was the last time that a team in the USHL went back-to-back. And just in the past 10 years, we have seen some great USHL teams.
Yeah. And I only remember it was one of those two teams because, when I started following the league, that was one of the, we did this.
Yeah.
And that was when I started following the league. So it's been a while.
That's how hard it is. 93, 94. Assistant coach Brandon Godkin wasn't even born yet when that happened. And yes, I looked that up. Wow. He wasn't even born yet. One of our assistant coaches wasn't even born the last time a team went back-to-back in this league.
I was in high school.
It's hard. You need luck and you need health. Neither of which have gone the Phantoms' way this year.
Not at all.
Oh, the team's not going to be the same because we lost Shane LaChance.
No, duh.
Yes, but that's what Nathan Lewis was brought in for. But Muskegon took care of that in the preseason with a boarding call.
With no consequences.
With no consequences.
And no camera, no broadcast.
But Lewis is going to be back soon. We're not talking about months anymore. We're talking about weeks. Lewis is going to be back soon. We find out that we lost Braden Clark for the season. Now we find out we've lost Miles Gunty for the season. This team is on pace this year to lose anywhere between 400 to 500 man games to injury, suspension, tournaments, whatever. That if you add up all the games that players will have missed this season, Youngstown is on pace for somewhere between 400 to 500 games. That is unheard of in this league.
They've only had 2 players play in every game this year.
Yeah.
Adam Patilla and Tomas Machu.
But despite all that going against Youngstown, 4th in the Eastern Conference right now, 2 points behind Green Bay, 4 points behind Muskegon when we have 2 games in hand on them. That's where we're sitting right now with 22 games left in the season, with a third of the season still left. That's where Youngstown sits right now, in spite of all that.
And a heck of a lot of home games coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, last year, this year, Youngstown historically not great on the road. There's a lot of home games coming up at the end of this season. But again, if you want to live in this fantasy world that the team is just making these decisions to piss you off, you could not be more wrong.
And how important do you think you are that you think that they're making decisions to piss you off?
I know.
I hate to break it to them.
A couple of them, maybe. The rest of them.
Be honest.
I can't deny that if I was in the position.
Full transparency, my oldest son, he really liked Brandon Swoboda. Swoboda signed his phone. He still has his phone case that one day. He likes him. He understands He's in high school. He's a freshman. My son's a freshman in high school. He understands what's going on. Was he a little bit upset? Yeah, but moving on. I think there's a lot of people in that same situation, that same boat as he was in.
All right. So my name is Sam. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Do you feel better now, Sam?
I feel a little raspy. All right. So with that, we're going to jump to a short break. The weekend preview is coming up next with the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Western Reserve Radio is the Valley's online source for sports talk and local live events. Tune in and be a part of their live weekly shows, as well as all of the hard-hitting action of Youngstown Phantoms hockey, high school football, and the GDFL. Find them at westernreserveradio.com. Tune in and the Live 365 app to be a part of the area's sports conversation. Be sure to visit them on Facebook at Western Reserve Radio and on Twitter at WR_radio.
This is Voice of the Phantoms and friend of the show, Matt Lipsack, and you are listening to the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
This is the Dump and Chase podcast on the home of Phantoms hockey, Western Reserve Radio. And since that last segment went a little longer than we thought it would, we're going to be rushing a little bit through this one, I'd say.
Okay, rush.
All right. So starting out, as always, with the Eastern Conference schedule, on Friday, Tri-City will be traveling to Chicago to take on the Steel. Cedar Rapids will be in Dubuque, and Green Bay will be out in Sioux Falls. On Saturday, Dubuque will be traveling to Des Moines. Green Bay, again in Sioux Falls, the second of a two-game series there. The U17s, the NTDP, coming back into it finally after a few weeks. They will be heading to Muskegon. Tri-City at Chicago, the second game of that series, and Cedar Rapids will be traveling to Waterloo, which, if I remember correctly, I think is like a half-hour drive. Don't quote me on that. But I don't think it's that long of a drive. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyways, on Sunday, Cedar Rapids traveling to Des Moines. That'll be the third game for Cedar Rapids this weekend, all traveling to 3 different places. Muskegon will be at the U17s. That'll be a second of a home-and-home series between the two of them. Madison is at Chicago, and Dubuque will be at Lincoln. Now, as far as Youngstown is concerned this weekend, 3 games coming up, 2 of them in Madison, and then the Sunday game in Waterloo. That is the makeup game from January 13th. So as far as Madison, these teams last played October 29th at the Cavelli Center. The Phantoms lost 4-3 in overtime. I had to go back and look. If you guys remember, this was Andy Brandt having the blow up on the bench.
Yep.
Getting a 2-minute minor for it, somehow did not get kicked out of the game.
That was an odd situation, to say the least.
Apparently, he found the line to toe.
Yeah.
Between getting a bench minor and getting thrown out of the game.
Yeah. I sit right behind the bench, and I heard everything he had to say that night.
I mean, we've seen that a couple of times this year.
Yeah,
but
we have.
Andy isn't on Team USA, so
yeah,
I don't know how you avoid that.
All right, so Youngstown, so far in 2 games with Madison this season, is 1-0-1. There's these 2 games, and then there'll be 2 more games at the Cavelli Center at the end of March. Madison last weekend dropping both of their games to Chicago and Green Bay, both of those by a score of 4-1. Madison, a little bit of a rough stretch here. They've lost 6 in a row. They've lost 8 of their last 10 and 10 of their last 14. Madison coming into the weekend with a record of 17-17, 4-2. That is good for 40 points and 5th in the Eastern Conference, with Chicago and Cedar Rapids quickly catching up on them. Youngstown coming in with a record of 22-12, 4-2 for 50 points. And like we said before, fourth place in the Eastern Conference. Both of these games, Friday and Saturday, puck drop is 8:05 local time, and the games will be available on Flow Sports. And in the interest of powering through, we're going to move right on to the game on Sunday. This game is in Waterloo again. This is the makeup game from January 13th. This will be the first of two games between these teams. The second game will be the school day game coming up here at the end of the month on February 29th. Waterloo last weekend beat Green Bay on Friday 5-4, then lost to Dubuque 6-1 on Saturday. Waterloo coming into this weekend with a record of 25-14, 0-1 for 51 points. That is good for third in the Western Conference. Waterloo, and we brought this up before when we thought they were going to be playing Waterloo. Waterloo so far this season, a .725 win percentage at home. It's going to be interesting to see how Youngstown's speed plays out on the Olympic size sheet that Waterloo plays on.
The one oddity in the league, you think Waterloo has a slight advantage because, it's their home ice, but speed does benefit from open ice. And they have about 15 feet to each, or 15 feet?
Yeah, USHL rink is 85 by 200. An Olympic size rink is 100 by 200.
Yeah. So that's a lot of extra room. So really like to see how, Yenchko, players like that adapt to that.
Yeah. Birchall just came to mind.
So I can tell you too, in talking with some Waterloo fans when the game got rescheduled originally, they all thought the same thing. They were really wanting to see what Youngstown looked like on their ice because they know, and they see the same things we do about them being a skillful, speedy team. And they were, like I said, very excited to see that as well.
So the game on Sunday, that will be a 4:05 puck drop local time. Of course, keep an eye out on Phantom's social media for the watch parties at Kensington Golf Club. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we kept that pretty short. I don't know about you guys. I've ranted and raved about all I can for one episode.
Yeah. I mean, we're at that point of the season, we know what we got to do. So
yeah, Phantom's 3 games on the road here. The Phantoms, then we start talking about these home games. They're back next weekend at the Cavelli Center. And that's the start of an 8-game homestand, followed by 4 more road games, followed by 5 more home games after that. So again, getting down to the end of the season, but we're going to be spending a lot of time at the Cavelli Center coming up here.
Get to see you guys 3 times a week instead of just over the internet.
Yeah, instead of seeing each other over Zoom, we just wave at each other from like 8 sections over. Dan, the funny thing is every time I go up to the press box, I wave at you. You've never waved back once.
It's funny. I see you every time. That's a choice.
Like I'll be up in the press box. I'll wave at you 3 or 4 times. Never once do you wave back. I'm going to start holding up signs.
My kids always look up there.
My eyesight's not that good.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we're going to take one last break here, and on the other side, we're going to wrap up this show and look ahead to next week's episode. So keep it here one more time with the Dump and Chase podcast on Western Reserve Radio.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Mahoning Valley's leader for golf, Milk Creek Golf Course, is now booking tee times for 2024. We offer stay and play opportunities available with 9 area hotel partners. For more information, visit our website at millcreekmetroparks.org. Also, look for new, exciting opportunities coming soon, including an indoor player development center with Trackman, an indoor Callaway Club Fitting Center, and an Odyssey Fitting Studio in 2024. Follow us on Facebook at Milk Creek Golf Course or call 330-740-7112.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
This is Everett Fitzhugh, the radio voice of the NHL Seattle Kraken, and you're listening to the home of the Youngstown Phantoms, Western Reserve Radio.
We're back, and that will do it for this edition of the Dump and Chase podcast. A big thank you to all of you for tuning in this week, and hopefully most of you will tune in next week. Speaking of next week, next week's show, we will be recapping the 2 games in Madison and the Sunday matinee in Waterloo. We will also be previewing 2 games back at the Covelli Center. The Phantoms, maybe not happily, but welcoming the Chicago Steel back to Youngstown. So you can catch this show every Wednesday at 5 o'clock on Western Reserve Radio, either on westernreserveradio.com, the Live 365 or TuneIn apps, the Western Reserve Radio Facebook and Twitter pages, and the Youngstown Phantoms Facebook page. You can catch this show in its podcast format on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you were somebody that had Google Podcasts, apparently now they've done a better job with moving everything over to YouTube Music. So I guess that's an option again. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Of course, the merch store for the Phantoms with their new logos. And you can find all of this information on our website, dumpandchasepod.com. So, gentlemen, before we get out of here, any final words of wisdom?
Let it be. Let it be.
I was going to say more now than ever. After this past week's of social media comments, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, and I don't always want to hear from it.
Wow.
Let it be. Let it be.
All right. So as we wrap up, remember that hockey is a sport played on ice with sticks and a puck, and our podcast is the thing you just listened to. See ya.